Hi, Janalee. I'm so happy to have you here with us on the podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's jump right in and maybe give our listeners a little bit of your backstory. Could you maybe tell us about your history, what led you to doing the work you're doing today?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a bit of a winding, curvy road to get here, but I definitely was really grateful that I found a lovely university program that really catapulted me to where I am today. I know that for a lot of young folks, like being 18 years old and trying to choose what you're going to study and what you're going to quote unquote be for the rest of your life is a little bit challenging. But I studied languages and literatures in university, and that brought me to South America, which then brought me home to be a doula, which then also brought human design into my life. So seemingly potentially unrelated, careers have all it's all part of a really, I think, cohesive, beautiful like constellation of a journey.
Sure. It's funny how we start in one direction and it just leads us through this winding path. But we bring a little bit of each of our experiences with us. And I really feel like that makes us better at what we end up doing in the end. So let's go back to graduating at university. I also studied languages and literature. So it's interesting for me to have this talk with you. But I did notice on your bio that you said that you graduated proudly sober. So I wanted to maybe back up and see if you could tell a little bit of that part of your story, why you decided to live a sober life, et cetera.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't know how it is, down there, but up in here in Ontario and Canada, we get a little wild in university. I think it's probably pretty normal. Our drinking age is 19 here. So, as of, first year university, you're legal in terms of buying alcohol and going to the bars and stuff. And it was just I think I had just a bit of a wild ride. I really never knew what to stop. Drinking actually created it spurred an autoimmune disorder, psoriasis, which was really hard to deal with. But through dealing with it, it was just more drugs and alcohol. In my fourth year university, I just I really looked at myself and I was like, I can't believe that this is who I am. And it really just came down to, if I can't drink and not be like this, I guess I'm just going to not have to drink. So finishing university as a 22-year-old young woman who knew that she would have to be sober really for the rest of her life was not, and necessarily a fun thing to have to do, but it's been incredible. It's been really great.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, a lot of people I think probably have shared your experience, whether it's, from the earlier days or finding out in their 40s that this wasn't something they wanted to do. I actually have mostly stopped drinking myself, and it just really changes your life, I think, in a positive direction. But you mentioned that you had an autoimmune disorder from this. Could you talk a little bit about that? What was that, and how do you think drinking was connected to it?
Yeah. So I had a particularly, rough night. I had a lot of instances of strep throat, especially after a lot of drinking. So there was one time where I had, I knew I had strep throat. The doctor knew me, sent some antibiotics one way. I had a bit of a fever. And then after taking the antibiotics, my whole body, really actually from the jaw down, I developed little tiny like psoriasis spots. So psoriasis are usually kind of like larger on the joints. And I was just covered, I looked like a leopard from my jaw down in these like tiny red bumps. And it was awful. It was so painful. And the doctors all said that sometimes when your body's in that heightened state of fighting something and you add in something like antibiotics, autoimmune disorders can be triggered. The same thing actually happened to my father when he was around 13 years old. A round of antibiotics brought on really, really, really severe psoriasis. So I guess I just gambled a little bit too much and ended up getting it. And that's actually how I got into yoga.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's at university, I was a bit of a suck up or like teacher's pet. So I started doing, like, how you would break off and they had like tutorials. So I was a tutorial leader for Spanish. And I remember I was covered, and people sometimes didn't want to like stand close to me, or they like didn't know what to ask about it. And there was this older relatively, like mid-30s. At that point I was like 20. And he was like, hey, you don't look like you're doing so well, you should come to yoga, like I bet yoga will cure you. And I was like, okay, you're a pretty handsome older dude. Like, sure. He's like, yeah, I teach classes, so like you should come to my classes. So I started doing Bikram yoga religiously twice a day. And that was, you know, my foray into yoga.
Wow. So what was the experience with your autoimmune disorder when you started doing yoga? Did it help?
I think, you know, being in the hot room twice a day for 90 minutes and sweating really helped for sure. It took me about, I would say 10 months for my skin to clear, which has been great. I sometimes have flare-ups, but it's nothing like it had been. I think yoga really helped, but there was, you know, I had been introduced to the idea that there's a physiological part of this for sure,
Yeah.
but like what's going on, you know, above your jawline, which was interesting. You know, like, can we work with that as well as the symptoms?
Yeah, yoga really is about, you know, people see it as just this difficult stretching routine, but it's so much more than that. And like they call it a lifestyle for a reason, because it's really very holistic and getting you in tune with your thoughts and your breath. And I think that's the reason I have trouble with it is because I have trouble sometimes just being still and letting the other part happen.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So you then became a yoga, did you become a yoga instructor?
I first moved to South America before I became a yoga instructor. So I fell in love with yoga. I did it throughout all of university. And then when I moved, I'm one of those people who are like always in the right place at the right time. And people love to, I guess, share opportunities with me. So, you know, that student in my class, Jeff, thank you, Jeff, shared yoga with me. And then I had a friend. So I decided to become sober. I was fired from my university job and had to move in with my aunt who lived in the same city. And that was a bit of a low point. I was like, okay, Janalee, like this isn't going so good for you, girlfriend. And so I had moved in my last box to my aunt's house, and I had Facebook Messenger on my phone, and I had a message from a friend who I had met through volunteering who said, hey, I know you're studying Spanish at school. I'm in Peru. I hate this job. I hate this city. I want to get out of here, but they won't let me leave unless I find someone to replace me. Are you interested?
So that's how you went to South America. And that was
Yeah.
my next question. So I want to hear all about that. Tell us about your journey down there.
And I was like, sure. All right. You know, and my parents are like, absolutely not. They're like, you're 22 years old. Like, you're going to be a drug mule. You can't just like roll up to Peru and live there. And I'm like, yes, I can. So my parents ended up being very supportive, which was great. All my university professors helped move up my exams so I could leave a month early, because that was the only time I was able to transition. And she was leaving that job to do a yoga training in Lima. So I was like, okay, this is cool. So yeah, I got on a plane and I moved into this like tiny apartment that didn't have hot water. We really didn't have hot water like every other day, or water every other day. It was in the north of Peru. We were about like 20 minutes away from the best surfing really in the country. And it was like a total shock to my system, but I am thankfully like wherever I am, there I am, you know? So like I was able to just like be cool with it.
Very nice. So you taught English as a second language. Yeah, I've done that for about 20 years. So it's so interesting. You don't often meet people in our field, but the people who you do meet in our field, they're always really interesting people. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And the expat community is always so fun. And there tends to be lots of folks who come in and out, in and out. So it made for some interesting years. Yeah. I was in South America for about 5 years. I taught in Peru and then I taught in Venezuela, and it was truly a ride from beginning to end.
Yeah. So what brought you back to Canada, to where you are now?
So I was living in Venezuela. I had finished my second year in Venezuela. While I was there, I was able to open a yoga studio,
Mhm.
which was super lovely. So in the process of opening that studio, there wasn't yoga in Peru. So I had to do my own practice, or where I was in Peru. And there wasn't any yoga in where I was in Venezuela. So I was like, okay, I'll just open a studio. It'll be fine. And in the process of doing that, I was meeting a lot of pregnant folks
Mm.
who wanted to do yoga, because if you Google like how to have a great birth, yoga is the number one suggestion. So they were like, let's do yoga. And I wasn't super comfortable with the pregnant community. So I decided, I was like, where is like the crunchiest, most granola place I could learn about prenatal yoga? And I landed on Vancouver. So I went to Vancouver. I'm like, they know, like they're so spiritual over there, not so much in Toronto, but definitely Vancouver. So I went out to Vancouver for a 2-week program with Teresa of La Lupavia. And every day they would bring in a new professional, somebody who works with pregnant folks.
Okay.
And on like the 6th day or something, they brought in a doula. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know this was a job. Like, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I want to do. I want to be a doula. So I was just like so determined. I'm like, I want to be a doula. I decided that day. And then that day I went home and checked my email, and I got an email that my school in Venezuela was closing.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my sign, like classic
Yeah.
Janalee, like, I was like, so then like the next 24 hours, I'm like, I'm going to be a doula. I'm going to be a doula. And then I got an email from another school who offered me a job at like twice the amount of money. And I'm like, I guess I'm not being a doula.
Yeah.
So I went back to Venezuela for one, like my stuff was there. I still had so much of a life there. So I went back and I did one final year, but in my head, I knew I'm going to be a doula. That's what I'm going to do. That's my next step.
So what does it take to become a doula? I really don't, I know what a doula is, and maybe you could even explain what it is to listeners who aren't familiar with it, what it is, what it takes to actually become a doula.
So it's a bit of the wild, wild west in the doula world, because we are unregulated. So it actually takes nothing to be a doula.
I had no idea.
Yeah, which is like great and not so great. It's great for folks who, maybe like grew up around like, I don't know, like maybe they went to like 10 of their parents' births, or like, they've been a lot of births. Maybe they don't need the same kind of training. There's options where you can do like a 3-day weekend and become a doula and like read a couple books. I went to a 4-month full-time program out on Vancouver Island. So partly because I'm just someone who likes to be like do the most. That's like my MO sometimes, like how can I have the most training and be the most prepared? So and a doula is for me, I would say a support person who is uniquely and completely focused on the birther, and also their support person if they're choosing to have someone there for the birth as well. Someone who makes sure that the birther is aware of all of the options and aware of the decisions that they're making in terms of benefits and risks. Someone who's there on the day of the birth to manage and, help enjoy it as much as they can, despite any surprises that may come up. And then I provide continuity of care for the first 12 weeks after they're born to help them adjust to life with baby and parenthood.
Interesting. So you're able to do all of that without having been a mother yourself, correct?
Exactly. Yes.
Really interesting.
Yes.
So what does that period after the birth look like? The support. This is new to me. I thought I knew everything about being a doula, and it turns out I don't know anything.
Yeah. So classically, the doula, we like see the birther twice before the birth, once after the birth. We're on call before they give birth for any questions. But I have just seen so many times that after somebody has a baby, they just get sent home, and then that's really it. Like there's no, other than the baby gaining weight, nobody really seems to care how life is with the baby or the birther, at least in the medical system. So I decided I was going to bridge that. And I learned everything I could learn about having a baby in the first 12 weeks. thankfully, again, because I do birth work, I'm exposed to newborns very often. I was doing a lot of overnights, spending a lot of time with babies,
Mhm.
but I'm on call for clients. So any question that they have about anything like poo color, sleeping, what does this cry mean? What do I do now? How do I do more tummy time? Am I doing too much tummy time? You know, any of those kinds of questions. Is my bleeding normal? I'm still
Mhm.
having pain in my pelvis. Should I see a chiro or an osteo? Like any of
Right.
those questions, I'm available to folks for the first 12 weeks after baby's born.
Wow. And what about like the care of the mother in terms of this is all making me think a lot of how Asian women and the generations of women kind of take care of each other and move into the home, and they make special soups and things that have like bone broth and things that are healing for the mom. Is there any nutritional element to it?
I joke like my style as a doula is I'm a sister doula and not a mom doula. So I always say like there are great mom postpartum doulas that we can get you, and they will come into your home and like make
Probably
you
cook.
food.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't want me. Like neither of us are going to enjoy the soup that I make, but it is part of the prep for sure, is making sure that they have, you know, I mean, it's as a doula, it's hard because I don't want to tell somebody that there's a best way to do it. Like I
Sure.
part of my job is making sure that there's still room, but reminding them that like your body needs protein to rebuild everything that you're doing. So like, are you eating protein rich foods? Are you eating enough calories? You know, how does eating food feel? You know, is there a way that you can lie in bed a little bit more and like not feel guilty about it? Or why do you think it's wrong to lie in bed all day? So going through some of these things, yeah, like doing the 40-day lie-in or, you know, the 90-day kind of staying in your home. I wish I could pay clients to do that because I think it would serve them well.
Yeah.
But I do try to bring in as much of these beautiful, rich traditions as I can.
Great. So I'm a business owner as well. And just in terms of owning a business, how are you able to find your clients? How do you market your services? How do they find you?
I would say largely referral at this point.
Mhm.
Friends of friends who just love me and then they refer out. I run a Google ad. So I spend like the minimum. I probably shouldn't say that on air, but I spend like whatever the minimum is spend per month on a Google ad. I am on like the list of doulas in Ontario website. People can go and peruse based on where they're delivering and find an
Ah,
appropriate doula.
yeah.
But other than that, I like, you know, I tend to be in the right place at the right time and meet the right people. And I think that's been my, you know, best proven business strategy, even though
Yeah.
a little bit hard to, you know, explain or duplicate.
So you're basically on call for the time following the birth, and really even before the birth, you would have to be. So how many women do you typically work with at one time?
I try to book 3 to 4 births in any 4-week period.
Okay.
And I think that I feel like that gives me enough like space between. It doesn't really matter how close the due dates are because babies are just going to come when they're going to come. But I think that gives me enough breathing room to like recover,
Yeah.
give each family the care that they need, but also like this is part of my work, right? So I need to, you know, pay rent.
Yep, sure. Okay, so the next question I have has to do with human design. So you mentioned it in the beginning. This is something I've really been delving into. It was a concept that was fairly new to me, and I've really just been learning about it. So I know there are a lot of listeners who have no idea what it is. If you could maybe explain what human design is, tell us how you came to be interested in it, and then I have some more questions.
Totally. Okay. So human design is astrology on psychedelics.
Mhm.
So the idea that based on when your birthday and your birth time is, and of course what city you're in, it comes with an imprint. So the idea that where the sun was and where the moon was and where Mars and Venus and all of their positions in the world on the moment that you were born is going to create a bit of a map of energy.
Okay.
So in human design, we say the day that you're born and also 3 months before. So you have like your unconscious energy and you have conscious energy. All of that creates a beautiful picture of which energy is constantly available to somebody and which energy is going to be activated or unactivated depending on who we're around.
Really? Okay. Okay. I like the way you introduced that. Like I can visualize it a lot better now, even from having researched.
Yeah. And then based on like the configurations of energy, we have different types of people. So some people who have, there are some parts of the chart that we call motors.
Mhm.
If that person has, a motor activated, then they may be a little bit more someone who is designed to like take action or go out in the world and do things and respond to things. And there are some people who, for example, have less motors who are designed to like wait for an invitation, we say. So, and that's really based on the way that someone's energy naturally flows in their body and in their chart, or we call it a body graph. That's how, we decide that's how their type is decided. And then from there, we can, give advice for, or things to try and experiment with that will hopefully likely make life feel easier and feel a little bit more aligned and like things are happening versus making them happen.
Is this something you could do? I mean, this is totally spontaneous, but off the cuff, like if I were to give you my information, would you be able to pull up the information like during this podcast, or is it something you need to do separately?
I could pull your chart up if I had your information. Yes.
I just thought it might be kind of cool to show somebody what it looks like and maybe go through just one aspect of it with a suggestion of something.
For sure.
I think that'd be really fun if you're
okay.
up for it. All right.
Yeah.
So what do you need from me?
Okay. I'm just going to pull up. I need your birth date. I need your birth time, and I'm going to need your city of birth as well, just so it pulls up like universal time. Okay.
All right. Tell me when you're ready for what.
Okay. Let's
so
get this guy going. Oh, this is great. I'm so
sorry.
glad.
I never do anything off the cuff like this, but I just think it would be fun.
Okay, great. No, sorry. My thing is just loading here. Let me just see if I can. Oh, I can't do that yet. Okay. I was going to just try to share my, okay. So Carrie Neely, I'm just going to put your name in here. Click here for a new chart. Oh, this is great. Have you pulled your human design chart before?
I did just recently, but I had no idea what it meant.
Okay, cool. All right. I'm glad that you feel like my brief explanation was helpful. The visual of human design really helps as well, of course, because like we can see the way things are activated. Okay, so here we go.
You could always do, I'll put this on YouTube, and you could always do like a visual of it in the comments or something so people could reference it.
Perfect. Okay, so can I have your year of birth?
the year 1974.
Okay, and then the month?
July.
Which is 7. Yeah. And then the date?
9.
Okay. Do you have your birth time?
Yep. 6:30 a.m.
Cute. Nice breakfast baby.
Yes.
That's what I love to. Were you born in, what country were you born in?
The United States.
Amazing. And then the city?
Westchester. 2 words.
Chester. All right. Let's see what comes up. It like auto populates Pennsylvania. Okay. All righty. Here we go. It's just loading. Ooh, the suspense is killing me.
I have a son who I always have said is a really old soul. He's a really cool kid. He was born on 11/11. He's got all these 11s in his energy field. Maybe I'll have to book. I should book him a session with you.
Totally. I would love that. This is okay. All right. So I have your chart here. Are you looking at your chart? Do you have it?
Nope. I'm just listening.
Okay. So I just pulled your chart. And if you're using a software from human design, so I personally like Genetic Matrix. You can pull a free chart. There's lots of other places that you can pull it. Usually on one side of the body graph, you're going to see some information. So what folks want to really look at, I think, would be the person's type. And then the strategy. So for type, we have here an emotional manifesting generator. So the first word for type will be the way that someone is designed to make decisions.
Mhm.
And then what comes after that is going to be their type. So we have 5 types. So you are a manifesting generator.
Mhm.
So the way that your chart is lit up, which is really beautiful, is you are going to, manifesting generators are designed to do multiple things at once and not do them slowly. So
Mhm.
you are the person who is likely like making breakfast while answering emails, while, maybe being on the phone with
100%. Yep.
somebody. And then you finish making breakfast, you leave the room, and then you come back and you realize that you've left every cupboard open and, maybe like in the process of doing things, skipping steps. So needing to
Mhm.
go back and like finish tasks, even though they were like, you were done them, it doesn't mean that like maybe the whole process was complete.
Yeah, I just did that before I jumped on. I muted and said to my son, can you check the thing I just put in the oven? Because I put it on to bake and it would have burnt. And he said, well, how long? I said, I don't know. I just made up the recipe.
There you go. Yes. So that's very manifesting generator of you for sure. And there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of power with manifesting generators. So we have a bit of the manifestor side, which is to initiate, a bit of the generator side, which is to respond, but we're really designed to respond. But all of that power and how fast things move sometimes make us feel like we are the ones who are making things happen. We are
Mhm.
the ones who are doing things, but we are typically most powerful when we're responding.
Oh.
So that means that, rather than, so the podcast, I would be interested to know, were you like, you woke up one day and you're like, I'm going to do a podcast, or somebody said to you, or you saw something, an opportunity where you said, that's what I want to do. Like someone will throw it at you and then you say, yes, I'm going to do that, or no, rather than it coming from like feeling like it was totally your own decision you made on your own.
I think it comes from this particular example was a little bit of both. I had been listening to a lot of podcasts, but I really did wake up one day in January and say, this is something I should probably try. But then I think the response part of it was I just kind of threw a note out there thinking I might be able, I was just telling people what I was going to do. But then from there, the whole podcast changed because I suddenly had like 160 women who wanted to be guests, and I wasn't even planning on having guests. And it just turned into something really cool and wonderful that I had not planned.
That.
Yeah.
I love that. So people reaching out to you and you responding like
100%. Yeah. And it's
very
still
cool.
happening. It's still going that way.
That's amazing. And the emotional piece is making decisions. So we say that anybody who's an emotional type in human design is going to have these waves. So really being mindful that when we want to do something and we're like, yes, 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 and we're really excited and happy about it, we should probably wait 24 to 48 hours because it's not always as exciting the next day,
right,
when we can't get our refund back because we've already booked. And then we're like, ooh, that wasn't maybe so great.
Yeah, that's actually spot on with my life.
So human design is designed to be an experiment. So, when people learn things about their charts, it's supposed to, it's about like leaning into certain things versus the others. So one thing that can I share one thing from your chart?
Please.
See how so one thing that we have here in your chart is you have an open G center. So it's the diamond shape in the middle of the chart. It kind of looks like the chakra system if you look at the body graph.
Yeah.
And each center is a different energy. And the G center is all about identity and purpose. And so sometimes people will hear things about their human design chart and be a little bit, maybe not embarrassed but just like, maybe it was like a bit of a pain point for them before, but your G center is not colored in, which means it's not defined, which means that you are designed to change who you are and your purpose and your direction quite often. And so sometimes the feedback that people get, it's like, oh, well, like last week you were vegan and this week you're paleo. Like, you don't know who you are. Like you're always changing your mind and you're just like going with the waves and whatever other people want to do, you want to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes that comes across a little bit negative and people can be ashamed of that, thinking like, you're right, I don't know who I am. And I am always changing my mind. But human design says that that's what you are supposed to do. And
Yeah.
like, this is your permission slip, and do more of that, because that responsiveness is part of your power.
Yeah, I actually love that it doesn't show as colored in. Now, years ago, I would have said, this is awful. I'm supposed to be locked into exactly what I'm supposed to do. Like, I'm an educator, and I felt very trapped in a purpose that I thought I had to live in. This is what I do. I can't ever change it. I remember crying one day, like, there's so many things I want to do, but I can't, because this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I paid for and studied for, and I'm very good at this. So I can't do anything else. That's not what my life's supposed to be. Finances, family expectations, all of these things. But when I finally left that behind and started this business, my business is soaps and skincare, and which kind of came out of almost nowhere, of de-stressing from the life of an educator. But from there, I started the podcast, and I also do writing. And I always felt like I had to leave one behind to do something else. But at this point in my life, things have all kind of come together, and I'm very open to other things coming forth. I feel like we have to pivot. I mean, look at the economy now. Look what COVID did. Look, we're not locked into any one thing.
Yeah, I love that's very manifesting generator of you. I love like the multi-passionate, just doing a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
Starting one, leaving the other, going back to it, circling,
Yes.
like having, like 8 arms, like,
Yeah.
doing fun things. That's amazing. And your conscious sun is in the gate of beginnings. So you're designed to help to start things. So the energy of finishing may not be there. Other people may ask for you to help them like start their idea. What's the first step? What should they, how do they get this off the ground? And, again, we get told you have to finish what you start, and like, I don't know about that for you, Carrie. I feel like starting is the magic.
I've always thought that one thing, you're right, starting is the magic. I'm really good. I think that's one reason I was really good at teaching, and I still do a little teaching privately now. But a lot of it is just really like energizing people and getting ideas moving and going. And I teach a lot of writing, which is something I'd done for a long time, which kind of goes together. And I always said at some point, I've had people ask me if I do coaching, and I said, no, I haven't even thought about doing coaching. But if I do at some point, it will be exactly for that, helping people to generate ideas and get things started, but not the follow through and not the finish.
Perfect. I'm glad that you know what's yours and what's not yours.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for doing that. That was really fun and interesting. And
of course,
now that people can hear that, I would want to go and find out what my chart says as well. So one thing I ask everyone, there's 2 sides to this question. What has been your greatest challenge getting to the point where you are now, whether it's just in life or in business or whatever happens to be? And then on the flip side of that, what has been your greatest joy?
Yeah. For me, my greatest challenge to get to where I am, I think, is this, human design says it in my chart quite clearly, but I have this, and I still struggle with it today, really, is believing that I deserve it, really believing that I have earned it, and that I have to continue to earn it, and I have to forever deserve it. And that if I don't do what I do, then I will lose it because I only got it because of what I was, like, the whole deserving cycle. Yep. So that's a huge challenge for me, because that puts me in a place where I have to constantly be active and constantly making things happen. And I think it maybe even gives me a bit of like a God complex, in the sense that, like, I believe that I'm so powerful that I'm the reason why all these things happen. So yeah, I think that's probably been my biggest challenge, and as a childless doula, right, I get questions, how could you help somebody if you don't know what it feels like? We don't necessarily ask, our, oncologists, why they, can treat our illnesses if they've never had it. Right. There is an element of being a professional, and having that removal is, I think, part of what helps me do what I do really well.
That's what I was going to say.
yeah, deserving, yeah, challenges. And then the greatest joy, I think, in all of this has been finding little things along the way that allow me to release that thought of who I was, which allows me to really just be more of who I am. So, a tiny example of that is I used to have my clients, if they texted me, my phone would ding. It was like emergency bypass. Even if my phone was on silent, if they texted me, I would hear a sound, because I was constantly afraid that they would need me and that if they texted me, I had to be there.
Yeah.
I have since silenced all of my clients. If they call me, it comes through, but I've silenced their messages because and that's like in a strange way given me a lot of joy to realize like I can trust other people to call me if they need me, and I don't have to be somebody who answers within a minute to be valued.
Yes.
If I answer in 15 minutes, they're going to love me all the same.
Yep.
So that relationship with other people and feeling like I deserve love and I deserve, to be valued and paid for what I do, even if it's not to the nth degree of what I think that I should do, that has been like incredible.
Yeah, perfect answer. So the last question I have before I ask where we can find you online is, are there any books that you might recommend to a woman who maybe is interested in natural childbirth, in working with the doula and just kind of looking at things from a more natural perspective? Any books that maybe helped you when you were studying to become a doula?
Yeah, I think funny enough, the books that help people the most, I think, are not birth related. So really having people, any of these kinds of, I really like Conversations with God. That's a really beautiful book.
Oh.
I kind of like books that have people focus on like the mental emotional aspect of birth, because or mental emotional aspect of themselves.
Yeah.
Because I think people forget that we bring ourselves to birth. And that we aren't like birthing machines, So like we're going to bring, if I have a hard time, expressing what I need, it doesn't matter how many books on childbirth I read, because that's actually the more important skill. So I would encourage any of these books out there to do with mindset, whether it be athleticism. David Goggins is like a really popular read for my clients. Just the idea of like getting in it, and sticking in it and loving the darkness. I think those can be really great books for folks who want to have unmedicated births.
Perfect. So where can we find you online if someone wants to reach out regarding human design or as for doula services, if they are in your area?
Totally. So I think Instagram is the easiest way, because that will bring you to websites and any other TikTok and stuff. So for my business name is Mother Lover for my doula business.
I like that. Yeah.
Thank you. MTHRLOVER. So mother with no vowels and then lover. And then for human design on Instagram as well, you'll get my website. It's More HD Please. And I will talk to Carrie about, I can maybe put together something like an offering for folks, discount if you put that stuff in the
that would be a great idea.
And then folks can find me for a reading.
Perfect. Well, this has just been so fun. I could keep you on here all day and of course, selfishly ask you questions, but we're going to leave some things for the readers. And then after we finish this call, we'll get some information on an offer, maybe for the listeners or the viewers on YouTube, if they want to reach out. So thanks so much for being here with us today, Janalee. It was fun.
Thank you for having me. It was so nice meeting you. Thank you. Thank you.